Hey guys, it's me, Sarah. I'm writing you from Toronto, Canada. This is for my newsletter, and I want to just quickly, very quickly talk about the full moon coming in tomorrow. I'm really sick, so please excuse my energy. I've had a terrible flu for a week now, and I rarely get sick, so this one's really taken me out. I've been sleeping like 12 hours a day, 10 hours a day, trying to get better. In any case, it's been an adventure. So regardless, I want to open up some of our charts here and show you what's happening. Hold on a second. So the reason why this is an interesting full moon, and this is the chart for the full moon. It's coming in at 8:17 in the morning tomorrow, and that's Eastern Standard Time. The reason why it's interesting is because this is a super moon. So that means that the moon is the closest that it can be to planet Earth. In fact, I was reading on this astronomical website, on NASA's website, that we haven't had a supermoon this close since February of 2019. Well, I would imagine that this is going to be quite a spectacle, that we would all benefit from going outside and absorbing the light from that full moon. The light from the full moon. And I wonder if any of us ever really think about what that is and what that means. I teach this thing called Moon School, where we go really deeply into understanding what the lunar cycle actually means and what it's here for. And I'm in love with Dane Rudhyar, who's an astrologer from earlier in the 20th century. And he talks about how the lunar cycle is the way that God talks to us, basically. Every single lunar cycle, we move from inception of a seed idea, a pulse of energy that comes in at the new moon, and then it winds its way through this spiral dynamic of evolution. It comes into its fullness, and then it retreats back into potential again. And this is a 29 and a half day cycle that we will go through infinitely, right, for our entire lives and beyond, and always has been and always will be, until one day potentially that moon moves far enough away from the earth and dislocates or some crazy shenanigans like that. But that is certainly so far off from our realm of understanding that we don't even have to go there. In any case, every single lunation, there's this pulse of energy that comes at the new moon. And so it's really important when you're looking at the lunar cycle to understand the chart of the new moon, because this was the moment of inception. This is where the seed idea comes in. This is what the pulse of God is for the lunar cycle, right? This is what the message is. And this was our new moon chart 2 weeks ago on October 21st at 8:23 a.m. Eastern Standard. And we had a 28-degree Libra new moon. So this was a late degree Libra new moon. We had another Libra new moon prior to this. And every once in a while, this will happen where the new moon archetype does not correspond to the full moon archetype, but there's like a slight slippage, and that's totally normal in the lunar cycle. In any case, the pulse of energy that came in 2 weeks ago had to do with relationship. And if we do a double click on this, we can see that there was a very intense emotional component to this moon, because there was first of all, a grand trine of water in the sky. So these last 2 weeks may have been very emotional for you. And it was also squaring Pluto. So there was it's almost like there were patterns in relationship that wanted very much to break or be transformed, but the transformation might have been difficult. Okay, so anytime you get sun or moon squaring Pluto, you get this dynamic where the sun and moon's cohesion, like they like things the way they're identified with their reality, and Pluto wants to take it down. Pluto wants to regenerate it. It wants to burn through it, right? It wants to like transform it. And the square dynamic is like a wrestling match between that cohesion and that transformational urge. Now, emotions would have been running hot with the Jupiter squaring the new moon, right? A seeking of emotional safety that just might not have been available in the last 2 weeks. There might have been a kind of a desire to keep things status quo. There could have been a desire to keep relationships as they were, and then just this slow descent down into transformation, right? Of whatever relational patterns or whatever Libran patterns were presenting. Now, Chiron was also very closely opposite the new moon. And Chiron is a wound of self right now. There's a sort of a wound of me. And I feel like this was really speaking to how, like to issues where if we really pour ourselves into relationship or into dynamics that we feel are relationally appropriate for us, sometimes we sacrifice ourselves. Sometimes we give ourselves away. Sometimes we do things that we don't necessarily we're not all in on, but we prioritize the balance or the peace, and we prioritize the relationship over ourselves, and we start to identify ourselves in the relationship, and we start to identify that the relationship is who we are, right, rather than us being who we are. So this was the pulse that began 2 weeks ago, and whatever this has been bringing up for you in the last 2 weeks, I'm curious about it. I've been observing that for certain people, they've really come into a deeper level of compassion and healing in their relationships. They've generously stepped into a new way of giving and being connected that seems really lovely and really heartfelt. And for others, it could have been that there was a breakdown in relationship and an acknowledgement of where the pattern needs to shift, or what patterns need to change, or how we need to destroy certain paradigms in order to come back to authentic. Whatever the case, there's some themes been happening in the last 2 weeks, and now we're at the fullness of the lunar cycle, and so now is when we see it completely. At the full moon, we get the full thing. We get to see the panoramic. We get to understand the lesson that we've been learning. And the most interesting thing I think about this full moon is the fact that Venus is sitting at the exact degree in Libra that the new moon began on. And there's a yod to her from Uranus and Neptune. So we've got a strong commandment, a strong finger of God asking us to love whatever it is that we've seen in the last 2 weeks. So if you've been to the underworld and back, and this is a Scorpio season, so we may have been to the underworld and back. And as I said, it might have been a lot of emotion in the last 2 weeks, or a lot of upheaval in some ways. If we've been to the bottom and back, it's now time for us to make peace with it. And it's now time for us to find a sense of stillness and embodiment and simplicity and groundedness. Taurus full moon is a reminder that we all have sacred ground inside of us where we can feel safe, that there is a stability and a security, internal and intrinsic, to each one of us, and it's really all we need. We don't necessarily need the relationship, we don't necessarily need the other, but what we really need is found within, and it's that sacred, powerful, grounded, internal pulse of life that Taurus invites us to remember. It's a very peaceful archetype, very grounded, very embodied, very sensual, very slow, and very inward. So this full moon, just to reiterate, I believe that whatever transformation in relationship patterns has happened in the last 2 weeks, this is a moment where we need to bring love to them and heal and patch up, in a sense, any discord that may remain from that. We want to make love to the transformation that we've come through. We want to love and respect and honor what we've just come through. And we also want to find a sense of stable ground to hold on to. And it's okay at this full moon if you want to be alone. In all the full moons of the year, I think this one would be wonderful to be able to spend by ourselves, in commune with our body, with our nature, with the earth, or at least in quiet commune with each other. It's, again, a very watery sky, and very emotional, and very still and very deep. So I would recommend that you guys get out there and at least see this moon, because it's going to be stunningly beautiful wherever you live, and find a sense of inner calm and inner peace to hold you through the next 24 hours. Some of the questions that I always ask with Taurus to invoke the archetype are, what is it that I truly need? At the deepest level of me, what is it that I value more than all else? What is the foundation of my life? Where do I go to feel secure and safe? How do I honor my body and my reality? Those are some of my prayers. Okay, that's it. Talk to you soon. Bye.